Right. I should pull some out too. You're not looking like you're going live.
I decided to grab my apron, even though it's gonna cover up my shirt. It's fine.
It still has the other, look, it still has the other thing on it.
Yep.
We should really probably just always have the apron on.
Yeah, especially for the cooking classes.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go find mine.
For anybody that's in with us, you guys always have the option of taking or not taking yourselves off mute, but showing us your lovely faces. Not a necessity, but if you choose to, we would love to see you. For everybody to come on in and join us.
I hid my apron from myself. I'm just gonna go without it next time.
I have to keep mine in the exact same spot or I would never be able to find it. I realized that because I'm just like so forgetful for where I put stuff.
And I usually keep all my aprons in a drawer on a shelf, but apparently it's not there, so I must have put it in a special place.
You haven't.
Right, exactly. I'm trying to see if it went live on Facebook.
It says it on my end.
Oh yeah, it's live.
Yeah, it says live on Facebook. So
okay, there's just like a little delay. That's fine. That's what it's supposed to do. Okay.
I'm so excited to make this recipe, y'all. You don't even understand. Like my mouth is watering. I've been thinking about it all week.
I was gonna say she's been talking about this all week, y'all.
Tatiana said to me like, all right. We're making sweet potato fajitas.
Like you brought up the peeler, like peeling the carrots, and I feel like I just had my peeler and it's gone.
Well, I mean, you can use a sharp, small knife. If you have like a paring knife or something like that. Carrots. And probably a larger knife for the sweet potatoes. If you want to skin them, so you don't have to.
Now, actually, I'm gonna bring. I didn't clean the sweet potatoes off yet because I wanted to show like how much dirt is still on them from being freshly picked.
I wanted to see that too, so.
Okay.
That was good. All right, we got one more minute, 11:04, and then we're gonna be starting. This lunch smells very good. I feel like I cannot eat any kind of Mexican food without cilantro. I can't do it. Like I gotta have.
You know what? And I got cilantro in the fridge, so I'm gonna pull that out. Okay, we have one more person. It's about that time, Camilla.
Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Like I said previously, if anybody joining us today would like to turn your cameras on, we welcome that. It's not a necessity, but we would love to see your faces. If you like, today, you know what? Let me introduce myself for anyone who is their first time in the class. So I'm Pamia from Black Girls with Green Thumbs. I'll let La introduce herself also.
And I'm Latiana from Black Girls with Green Thumbs. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We are a nonprofit organization that encourages people to garden in their homes and in their communities to heal, nourish, and learn. We are very happy to see you this morning.
Yes, I'm particularly happy because I've been very excited about this recipe since we came up with it. It's delicious. I've made it before, and I'm hoping that you guys like it as well. So Latiana and I, since the pandemic hit, we've been doing these at-home online classes. And for the last few months, we've been focusing on doing some healthy plant-based recipes for everyone in our community. So I hope you guys enjoy this recipe. What we're making today are sweet potato fajitas. And I really like this recipe, and I kind of like singled it out to be chosen because there's this movement going on right now called like vegetable forward. And this is definitely a vegetable forward recipe. And basically what that means is kind of moving vegetables into the forefront of what we put on our dinner tables versus relegating them to like side dishes or like toppings or things like that. So this sweet potato fajita is a perfect example of a vegetable forward meal. And the reason that we decided on this recipe also is because I feel like I say this all the time in every single class, but we try to pick recipes that are very like beginner-like and very easy so that you're not overwhelmed if you're trying to transition into a plant-based lifestyle or if it's new for you. So this is a very easy recipe that has some wonderful root-based ingredients, and I hope you guys enjoy.
So I am just writing a note to everyone in the chat, and I'll share what I'm writing as I'm writing it as well. We are streaming this live on Facebook as well as recording this Zoom. So if you would prefer not to be streamed or recorded, you will have access to this class. But we would prefer that you stay on, but we definitely want everyone to be comfortable. Please, all of you all are muted, but remain mute throughout the class. But talk to us. So unmute yourself, have a conversation with us. You can ask us questions in the chat. We just want to be mindful of any background noise.
Right, absolutely. So we're going to talk a little bit, before we get into the recipe, we're going to talk a little bit about root vegetables.
Yes. So root vegetables are the underground base and the underground part of a plant. And when you talk about the different parts of the plant, or when you hear people talk about the different parts of the plant, particularly those edible plants that you eat, there are about like 5 different parts. So humans, we eat the leaves, we eat the stem, we eat flowers of plants, we eat the roots of plants, and we also eat the fruit. And for those of us who are not very technical, we call everything that we eat from the plant as the root. And that's not technically correct. But anything underground, we're like, okay, that's a root vegetable. But some comments, so I'll get more into that in the next couple of seconds. But some common root veggies that we eat are potatoes, carrots, parsnips, sweet potatoes, yucca, onions. All of these are the parts of the plant that grow underground, and they are root vegetables. And as I said, technically, all root vegetables that we consider roots are not necessarily roots. Some are bulbous growths that store nutrients that feed the plant in the colder months. And that's why these root vegetables, or in particular, these bulbous parts of the plant, they are so nutrient rich. So when we eat them, we are also getting those nutrients that the plants would be absorbing as well. So some that are bulbous growths would include fennel, onions. I said that was like a root vegetable. Ginger, beets, also turmeric, right, Tamia?
Yep, turmeric with, I guess it's like a ginger and turmeric are like rhizomes, but that's like a whole thing. But yeah, all roots, absolutely. So before we get into going through our ingredient list, I'm just gonna have everybody go ahead and preheat their ovens to 400 so that as soon as we go through that, we can jump right into the recipe. In this recipe, we're gonna be eating vegetables. So we wanna make sure we get the.
Okay, so I just preheated my oven. And I want to keep going on a little bit more about the root vegetables. Mm-hmm. Start getting into the cooking, and we also have some pictures and stuff to show you. But the bulbs, the roots, the tubers, all of those absorb water and nutrients that feed the rest of the plant. And those nutrients, they make those parts of the plant, those root vegetables, dietary powerhouses for us. So I know that sometimes, like, a lot of us eat a lot of potatoes, or you might hear potatoes and other like more of those common root vegetables, they get a bad rep because of like how, I guess, how carby they are, but they're really, really good for us because as we're saying, like they are the powerhouse nutrients of the plants. And so Black Girls with Green Thumbs, in addition to doing these online classes, we also build gardens and manage gardens for different community organizations. And we've also built some gardens at some residential gardens for, people like you. And one of the gardens that we built this summer was at the Darby Library. So back in the beginning of November, we actually harvested some sweet potatoes. So I'm going to be using sweet potatoes that we harvested from the Darby Library. So here's a first look at some of my sweet potatoes. And I actually have some pictures to share with you from that day because that was the first time that I have harvested sweet potatoes. And it was so amazing. I like to say that I'm not really good at growing things that I can't see. So root vegetables have always been like pretty challenging for me. Like even when I grow carrots, like sometimes it's like always a hit or miss. I might get like those really spindly carrots, or sometimes I'll get some that look good, but I'm not the best root vegetable grower. So I'm really excited to share these pictures with you because I think it's important for us to have a clear understanding about not only where our food comes from, but also how that food grows. Give me a second. It's like blocking my screen, so I can't click what I need to click. Here we go. And everybody can see my screen? Pamia?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you, Dana. So this...
I apologize.
That's okay. So in order for us to harvest the sweet potatoes, we actually had to like clear all of the soil. So this was after I like dug some of the soil and started to see the sweet potatoes peek through. So as you'll see, like from that one stem that was above ground, there are many sweet potatoes that are growing, many roots that are growing from that stem. And this is after I dug through, and this was like a particularly large sweet potato. And like, look at that tunnel that it created.
Insane.
And look how large it is. So as I said, that the sweet potatoes, they from the one like stem or plant that we created, many roots spread out. So those little roots that you see peeking from the soil, those are potential other sweet potatoes that I probably had already picked, but just wanted to demonstrate how large this sweet potato was and the hole that it came from.
Those are much bigger than the ones that I have. They look so good.
They did so well over at the library. And I want to talk about how, why I think that happened versus like our home gardens.
Do you think it was the depth of the bed that had anything to do with it? Because that was a pretty deep bed.
It was a deep bed, and it also, we didn't plant anything else but sweet potatoes in that section. There was like a good 4 to 5 feet of sweet potatoes.
Right.
So they had so much room to grow. Whereas like in our home gardens, we're like, we got a 5-foot bed and we're planting multiple things in there. So I think that giving the sweet potatoes the space to grow really enabled them to grow optimally. Look how large the sweet potato is, y'all.
Yeah, when you put your hand in it for comparison, you really can see how magnificent they look.
Mm-hmm. And next to it are the smaller sweet potatoes. And the ones that I picked from my house, they're like fingerling potatoes. Okay.
Alrighty, so are we good to go through our ingredient list?
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect. So I will show you guys everything that you're going to need for this recipe. The beauty of this recipe is that you can kind of pick and choose what you like based on your personal preferences. So for example, you guys have the ingredient list, and it doesn't call for carrots or anything like that, but I have carrots here today because I want to do my fajita. So first thing first, you're going to I have 5 medium to large sweet potatoes here today. As you can see, I've already peeled the skin off of them. It's generally going to create about a cup of sweet potatoes for each one this size, and this recipe calls for 5 cups. So that's why I have 5 here. I also found these beautiful, beautiful carrots at a produce junction in my area. We have some purple carrots here today, as well as like the whiter type carrots. And I think that these are so pretty. And every time I've had them like prepared in like some fancy like vegan restaurant. And I can attest that the taste is like more succulent than your average carrot. I really like these versus your orange carrots. We also have our sweet peppers. So I bought a bag of mixed peppers from Produce Junction. So we have orange, we have yellow, I have red, and also green that we're going to be adding into our recipe. We're also going to need.
Tamia, there's a question.
Yeah.
If my potatoes become black when peeling, should I discard?
So black, that
you can show us, Dana. Show us in your camera. We can see.
I'm actually not cooking right now. I had an appointment at the same time as the class. I don't know why I did that. I don't know. But sometimes when I'm making my potatoes and when you peel them, it starts to turn black in certain spots.
Okay, that's normal. Right.
So that is normal, and I could just like peel that off and cut it, or does it matter if I peel it off?
So there's 2 different types of like black spots. So for example, like I peeled these about an hour ago, right? So sometimes when you peel certain things like sweet potatoes or apples, like when that oxygen hits them, like there's a chemical reaction that happens and it can start to darken. But if it's like literally turning like black on the whole thing, I've never seen anything like that. I've seen it, like in certain spots, or some of them are spots that just like penetrate all the way down into the vegetable. So it doesn't matter how much skin you take off, you're still going to see like brown and black spots. But you can always send us like a picture or, like later on, like if you come across that issue again. But yeah, like it shouldn't be black in its entirety or brown.
Okay, that's not. Sounds good. It's just like spots, but I wanted to make sure. I'm peeling.
Yeah, and that's a food safety thing. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. So before we start, cooking at any time, we want to make sure that all of our ingredients have been washed. We're making sure that our surfaces are sanitized, and we're also making sure that we wash our hands well also. So Latiana and I have already done this, so everything's already cleaned. So moving on to the rest of our.
Real quick, because I know that you said that you wanted to see it, so I don't want us to get too far as I'm prepping as well. So I'm just cleaning my sweet potatoes now that I picked. So I just wanted to show you like the dirt that was on here in comparison to what it looks like clean.
Nice. And I'm being like, they look so much better than mine. Like I know mine are already peeled, but mine were from ShopRite. So obviously they're a lot fresher than the ones I got from ShopRite. So moving on with our ingredients, I'm gonna go through all of our seasonings. So you guys are gonna want to have sea salt. We powder. I black peppercorn because I wasn't paying attention. So I'm gonna have to grind this up myself for the recipe. We also have some cumin here, and the recipe calls for chipotle powder. I'm not going to be using chipotle powder today. Latiana is. I'm actually going to be substituting chipotle powder for curry powder because that's what I have. So that's another beauty in these recipes. Everything's based on your personal taste preference, and if you want to get creative and just try different things. So I'm going to be doing more of like a curry flavor in mine. And in these at-home classes, when we've been doing different recipes with you guys, we always talk about the importance of fresh ingredients versus, like powdered or frozen or canned. And it's so important, especially now, we got coronavirus, regular flu, all of these things going around. We want to make sure that when we're eating, we're getting like optimal nutrients. You know what I mean? So if you have the chance to eat something fresh, always go for fresh. And the reason that I bring that up in particular is because I don't usually use garlic powder all that much because I love fresh garlic so much. But for this particular recipe, it's important to use the powder because as we're seasoning all of our root vegetables, we want to make sure we get all of those seasonings like all over each piece. So if I was to use, just like cut up garlic, we probably wouldn't get that same nice garlicky flavor as if we use garlic powder. So moving on from our seasonings, you guys can do this or not, totally up to you. I don't know if you can see, but I have my Instapot back here where I have made some quinoa that is gonna go in our fajitas. You can also do brown rice, basmati, jasmine, whatever you like. Again, this is a Mexican recipe. So in most Mexican restaurants, you just get, like the plain white rice with cilantro. And that brings me to the cilantro here. I said this in the beginning of the class. I am totally obsessed with Mexican food. And in my opinion, you really can't have a Mexican dish without cilantro because it is such an important and fresh flavor. So we're going to be adding the cilantro as a topping in my house. And we're also going to be adding it to the crema that we're going to be making as well. Last couple ingredients you guys are going to need are some flour tortillas. I picked flour tortillas for this recipe specifically because they're also plant-based. This is a plant-based recipe. So if you're vegan or vegetarian, you don't have to worry about any additional ingredients in most flour tortillas. So we have those. And for our crema, you guys have the option of doing a yogurt-based crema or a sour cream-based crema. Some people do both. Some people do either or. At my home, I have this plant-based almond yogurt that I'm going to be using. And Latiana is actually going to be doing her crema with sour cream. So that's something you can play with in the future too to see what kind of flavor you prefer. And I believe that that's it for all of our ingredients. So yes. Hopefully sorry, would you say La?
No, I was saying yes. You cover all the ingredients.
Awesome. So hopefully you guys have your ovens preheated. Check it out. Make sure that's at temperature, which should be 400 degrees. And we're going to jump right into our recipe. We're going to start by lining our baking sheets with parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper, you can also use aluminum foil. So just to give you a visual, I have my baking sheet already prepared here, and I have my aluminum foil sitting right on top. The reason you want to line your baking sheet is because we're roasting vegetables, and all vegetables do have like some water in them. So as they're cooking, you don't want them to start to stick to the pan and get like all crusty and gross, and it'll be kind of hard to remove them from the pan when you're done cooking. So you want to make sure you line that either with that parchment paper or aluminum foil if you have it. So
and I wanted to know about these freshly picked sweet potatoes. So they're only like about a month or so picked. And when you grow sweet potatoes at home, you typically need to like cure them. And when you cure them, that helps for the sugars to develop. That gives it that sweet flavor. And it also helps to make them more firm. Because when you first pick them, sweet potatoes are they're so gentle and tender. So you have to be very careful when you're picking the sweet potatoes. So mines are not fully cured. They're edible, but they're not fully cured because they still needed like quite a few more weeks. And you cure them by it's a process, but the final curing process is to place them in a cool spot in your house, and then you just let them sit. But mines are really, really soft right now. Not really, really soft, but they're soft. And I just peeled some of mine, and then here's one that's still waiting to be peeled. So it's like just very easy for me to make a nail indentation just to demonstrate like how soft the sweet potatoes are.
Thanks for that. That's a really good distinction, especially for those of us or anybody that's tuning in that actually was able to grow any root vegetables this year. And I actually noticed that last year when I did like some parsnips, I think it was, and I noticed that same thing too. And I was like, wait, are they supposed to be this like malleable? But they definitely put them on my table, and then like I cooked them 2 days later, the texture definitely changed, and they did become a little bit more firm.
Yes. And another thing, as I'm peeling the sweet potatoes, one cool thing to know is that the skin of a sweet potato, so the flesh of a typical like medium large sweet potato, has enough vitamin A to meet your daily recommended allowance for the day. So although we are peeling these sweet potatoes, it's just something to note that some recipes, you don't always have to peel your sweet potatoes. Actually, for a lot of like regular potato recipes, I keep the skin on.
Me too. People don't realize how much nutrients skin has when it comes to like fruits and vegetables. And I mean, even down to like, you know me, when I juice, I'm like one of these people that juice with lime skin on because it has like all these oils and tannins that are really beneficial, especially when you eat them or juice them in conjunction with the actual, you know, pulpous fruit on the inside.
Yes.
But this goes into stuff like bananas. Like there's people all across the world that the skin on the banana. And, you know, like Americans, we're kind of coddled in a lot of ways. We don't do bitter taste at all. But in other parts of the world, bitter tastes are really important and, you know, different cultural cuisine. But I feel like if there's one culture that really doesn't do bitters, it's Americans.
Yes.
You guys can start to open yourselves up to that. It has a lot of nutritional benefit. It's a little startling at first, but you'll get used to it. All right, so we're gonna jump into putting our seasonings together with our oil. So our recipe had called for olive oil, and that's a great oil to use. You could also use what I have, which is grapeseed oil. It's one of my favorites. It does really well in high temperatures when you're frying foods or when you're baking them or roasting them in the oven. So we're gonna go ahead and do 3 tablespoons of our oil into a small bowl. We got 1, 2, and 3.
And I'm going to use avocado oil.
Another.
I have very little olive oil.
It's a very healthy oil. The avocado oil has some good fats in it. So next up,
I'm sorry, guys. What do you suggest would be the best oil to cook with?
so I think that would depend on what you're cooking.
What you're making? Okay.
Right. So like olive oil doesn't do well in really high temperatures. It tends to burn and start to smoke, and that completely annihilates a lot of the flavors, right? So olive oil really isn't good if you're trying to fry or, you know, you're going to be cooking in high temperatures. Like I said, rapeseed oil is one of those really healthy oils that does really well in high temperatures as well. I have never done avocado oil in high temperatures. Have you, Latiana?
Yes, and it actually says it on here that it's good for high temperatures up to 500 degrees.
Perfect. So those are 2 options. You're doing, you know, any like stuff on the stove. Like most fajitas aren't made in the oven; they're made, you know, like in the pan. So if you want to do that in the future, those are 2 great oils. And so if you're just doing basic sautéing, I will go with olive oil because it's much cheaper than avocado oil and grapeseed oil. That's the other thing. They're a little bit more on the pricey side, and you may not always be able to find them, you know, at your convenience. And while you can with olive oil. So going back to creating our spice bowl, we're going to go ahead and put 1 teaspoon of our salt in. Going to add that. Next up, we are going to be doing 1 teaspoon of our paprika. So sometimes the have, you know, like just like that shakeable thing on top. I just take it off so I can put my spoon inside and get my measurement correct. All right, added my paprika. If we're moving too fast, you need to slow down a little bit, but I do want to get through the recipe so we can actually like enjoy it. Next up, we're gonna do a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. So I told you guys that I have black peppercorns. So if you're not familiar, that's the whole, like the seed, the form of the pepper. Black pepper, usually when we buy it in the store, it's already ground up. And this was a little cheaper. I think I got it from the dollar store, but you know, this is what black peppercorns look like. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put them in my mortar and pestle here. I try to use this as much as possible because it's really fun. And I'm gonna go ahead and just quickly grind those up. So I can get, and as you guys can see, I used about maybe 10 or 15 kernels, and that should give me what I need for this 1/2 teaspoon measurement of black. And you see that really takes no time at all. And it's like, you know, go to the Italian restaurant and they're cracking fresh black pepper. You get that aroma, it's beautiful, and it tastes really good. We're gonna go ahead and scoop our 1/2 teaspoon of our black pepper into our oil mixture with the rest of our seasonings. And we're gonna do the same thing for chipotle powder. So as a reminder, Latiana is using chipotle powder at her house today, and I'm using curry powder. So we're gonna get some really nice flavors going here. Curry powder. If you really like a certain spice, or if you really want something more spicy or less spicy, feel free to adjust these measurements. So if you know you really like chipotle powder, you can go ahead and put a whole. That's it with my curry because I really like curry. Next up, we're going to do 1/4 teaspoon of cumin. I love cumin, my favorite spices. If you guys love hummus, this is one of those things that makes hummus taste really amazing.
So because I don't eat garlic, and cumin is actually a good substitute for garlic. So instead of I'm going to do a 1/2 teaspoon of cumin so I can like overcompensate for not having garlic powder in my recipe. And let me be clear, I love garlic. My body doesn't like it.
That's okay. And I'm glad you brought that up because, again, if there's anything in any of our recipes that, go against certain dietary restrictions you have, feel free to omit. Next up, we're going to be using our cayenne pepper. So it calls for 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Again, if you really like that spice and you're used to it, you can go ahead and add more. But we have a lot of different peppers in here so far, even with the black pepper. So if you don't want it to be too spicy with the chipotle or the curry powder, you can use that 1/8 of that. So I'm gonna put a little tiny bit because I don't want the spice to overpower me. I like spicy, but I don't like being uncomfortable. So I'm gonna go with the 1/8 measurement.
Meanwhile, I did a 1/4.
Latiana likes spice. So the last granulated ingredient we're going to be putting in is that garlic powder. Our recipe calls for 1/8 of garlic powder. I am going to be using 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder because I really like garlic. If you're like me, you can go ahead and do the same. If you want to do it by the actual ingredient list, again, that's 1/8 we're going to add in there. So I'll show you what this looks like. You can just take a fork and start to whisk that around, and it smells so good. It looks really beautiful. Gonna mix that up really well, and then my that I'm ran into my kitchen and here's me whisking away. So now we're going to jump into cutting up our root vegetables. So like I said, if you guys want to take the skin off, you have that opportunity, but it's totally up to you. My potatoes have already been skinned. And what I like to do is quarter them. So what that means is cutting them into 4 pieces. That will make it a lot easier to slice into wedge-like shape. So I'm hoping you guys can see me. It looks like you can. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one in half and then quarter it. Sweet potatoes can be a little hard. So one thing to keep in mind is just to be careful of keeping your fingers away from cutting yourself when you are slicing sweet potatoes. So
and that's why quartering them really helps, because it helps it to be like more manageable and holding it with your hand.
Yes, absolutely. So as you guys can see, this is 2 pieces of the quarters, and we're gonna go ahead and place them on the flat side. This is gonna make it easier to cut and dangerous because they're gonna be a lot more stable. And we're just gonna go ahead and cut them into wedge pieces. The idea is kind of like a steak fry size. If you prefer smaller than that, you can do well. The reason smaller might work, in particular for today, is because it would have to cook for less time, the smaller it is to cook all the way through. So just to show you guys the size we're going for, this is your sweet potato wedges to look like. I'll give you guys a chance to go ahead and cut up your sweet potatoes. And if you have any carrots or parsnips, feel free to do the same thing there.
So I was telling Camilla that every time we host these classes each month, I'm always hungry. Like I never manage to eat breakfast. So I cannot wait to dig into this. I'm so hungry.
I agree. But I think it makes for a better recipe because unlike, they always say go shopping when you're hungry because you tend to get, you make bad food choices. I do cooking when I'm hungry though, because I feel like it makes me a lot more creative in the kitchen because I'm like,
Absolutely.
I so agree.
And all of my seasonings, and a lot of times I come up with some really cool stuff. So this is looking really good. And what I'm going to do for you guys today is I'm not going to cut up all 5 of my sweet potatoes just so, we can kind of get this stuff in the oven. We do want to roast for at least 20 minutes or a half an hour. So I have my first sweet potato cut up into my steak fry like shapes, and I put that in a bowl, like add these in. And I'm going to cut up one of my carrots to add as well. So I showed you guys in the beginning, I had purple carrots as well as some white carrots. If you like, you can skin them, but it's not a necessity. So I have my potato peeler. I'm going to go ahead and skin this purple carrot. And again, if you guys have never had these type of carrots, the flavor is a lot more savory and like succulent in them well. And oh my God, when they're roasted, they are absolutely delicious. So I've just skinned my carrot here, and look how beautiful it looks on the inside. So as you can see, it's purple on the outside, but it has like this beautiful like orangey yellow in the middle. And we're gonna do that same thing that we did with the sweet potatoes, but since this is a smaller root vegetable, I'm just gonna half it like this. You can see I've cut it in half. Again, look how gorgeous this is.
Beautiful. It's so pretty. The contrast is amazing.
So pretty. Now imagine how it's gonna look roasted and seasoned.
I will say my favorite way to eat root vegetables are roasted.
Me too. beautiful. Especially when they're done and they have that like nice little crisp on the end of them, like they're not
exactly
and not undercooked. And I do like to have a little bit of a crunch. So that's something you guys want to consider what your personal preference is when it comes to your cooking time. So if you want them extremely soft for your fajita, that's fine. I wouldn't suggest it because, you know, in a fajita, you want to have like some density to what you're eating. But again, totally up to you. So I'm going to do one more carrot just for good measure to balance out that large sweet potato. And again, I am peeling just that first little layer of rough skin off. So again, we're bringing out that beautiful color. We're cutting off the top pieces that the greenery is attached to, and I'm just slicing them in half on both sides and cutting them right down the middle. And we want to keep our sizes as consistent as possible so that they can all continue to cook evenly. And I'm gonna cut this one more time. All right, so right now I have my bowl of my sweet potato wedges as well as some purple carrot wedges. And what I'm going to do is take my oil that we made with our seasoning and just mix it up one more time. And we're gonna take about 2 teaspoons. We're gonna put that right on top of what we've cut up in our bowl. And you can use your hands to actually mix this and just make sure everything gets evenly coated. If you have not enough, you can add a little bit more, but I would start off with the 2, just to see those. And it looks like this is doing a nice job coating, but I'm gonna add one more.
And for those of you who cringed when Pamela said, like, use your hands to mix it up, when you're cooking, please don't be afraid to touch your food. Like, that really helps to connect you with the food that you eat, helps to keep you centered and grounded, connect you to the environment. So, like, don't cringe.
Yes.
Get absolutely in there, touch it.
So, funny little story. When I was a kid, I watched the Silence of the Lambs like series. And Hannibal Lecter always talked about, oh, people have lost their touch with their food and I like to get my hands in there. And of course he was a crazy psychopath, but I totally understood, you know, later on, because I do believe that we have lost our touch with food. And I'm sorry if that just creeped you guys out, but
way to throw in a psychopath into the cooking class for me.
it's always good, right? All right, so these are nice and coated. I'm hoping you guys can see that we have a bunch of spices all over, all of our sweet potatoes and our carrots. And so what we can do now, if you like, you can rinse your hands because they're gonna be a little bit oily. So I wash my hands and dry them, and we're gonna transfer our everything in our bowl to our sheet pan. So as you guys can see, I have mine here, and we're just gonna space them out on here nice and even. And if you're like me, feel free to always even add on like an extra coat of seasoning. If you just want to sprinkle a little bit more garlic powder or a tiny bit more salt if you want, if you're really into, you know, like that chipotle flavor, or you're a cumin and a curry person like me, you can feel free to add a little bit more onto that. And I'm gonna do that as well. So I'm just gonna add a little tiny bit more curry powder onto
And I'm gonna add, I have a sea salt grinder and I like the coarseness of it. So I'm gonna add like a little bit more sea salt.
That's great. I'm adding a little bit more garlic powder and a little bit more. And after you do that, you want to pop them right in the oven, and we're gonna let them start to cook for 10 minutes until do the next thing. So I just want to show you guys what that looks like spread out on your pan. I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in the oven on 400. How's it going on your end, La?
I am caught up. I just threw mine in the oven.
Okay, awesome. So next up, we're gonna do the same thing, but what we're gonna be adding this time is our purple onion, and we're gonna be adding our sweet peppers. So we're gonna cut them up similar, but not exactly the same way we did the sweet potato. If you guys can hear, the recipe called for 1 purple onion. I have 2 smaller ones, which is gonna equal like a normal size one. And I'm gonna quarter them as well. So obviously, if
I
you
wanted
guys
to know, like, as I'm cutting these vegetables up, you'll notice, and I'm sure that Camilla on her end too, that we're not throwing away like any of the vegetable scraps.
Nope.
These are like, you can keep your vegetable scraps, throw them in the freezer, and you can actually make vegetable broth from them. So we like to, when we're cooking and thinking about like sustainability and food waste, we like to try to get as much as we can from foods, as long as it's, as long as it's safe. So I basically have a pile of vegetable scraps that I'm going to add to my bag in the freezer so I can make vegetable broth this weekend.
So as you guys can see, this is my scrap bowl here that I'm going to be putting in the freezer. So we have our red onions peeled, and they smell amazing. Red onions are really great to use in Mexican recipes. So we're going to go ahead and cut these into quarters. So that's 4 pieces. I had already cut off the tops and bottoms. It makes it a lot easier for them to just rest on your cutting board so that it's not wobbling and you're not risking hurting yourself as you quarter these. So I just quartered my 2 smaller, just like this. And look how beautiful they look. So we have these quarters that look just like this, and we're gonna throw them right in that same bowl that we use for our sweet potatoes and our carrots. So we're gonna these in. And next we're gonna move to our sweet peppers. I am going to start off with my orange pepper, and this is a really easy way to cut them. What I usually do is I hold them upright like this, and I will just turn them and cut them so I can get that flesh without cutting into the seeds on each side, just like this. So as you can see, you're left with that seed pod. You don't have to worry about all of that mess. So As you guys can see, we have our pieces in, this is kind of like quartered as well. That's going to be a theme in this recipe. And we're just going to slice them to that same thickness that we did with our sweet potatoes, to where they kind of look like steak fries a little bit. And you can use any color sweet peppers you like. I like to keep it varied because it just looks beautiful in the tortilla, and it's more fun and more nutritious for you, the more colors that you add into your diet. So I've already done that with my orange pepper, and I'm gonna do the same thing with my green and red pepper. Am I moving too fast for you guys? I hope not. Is this good? It's a good speed?
I think it's a good speed. I'm just going a little slow. I haven't gotten to my peppers yet. I'm still messing around with these onions.
No worries.
And actually, when Pamias mentioned about cutting the tops and the bottoms off the onions, like that's one way to avoid the like notorious onion crying situation. Because when you cut into the core of the onion, that's when it releases those chemicals that causes us to tear up.
Absolutely. And I was actually reading a medical journal not too long ago, and what I found very interesting in the article was that our human reaction to that chemical that onions have in them that causes our eyes to start to tear up is actually a really positive thing. It's cleansing.
It cleans out our eyes. Yeah.
So while it's uncomfortable and it kind of burns a little bit, it's actually really good for you. I'm not suggesting you take an onion and put it in your eyes, but it does serve a purpose. Nature is very interesting in that. So I am on my last pepper. I'm gonna go ahead and finish chopping up the red one. My red pepper was like very misshapen, which is very common in nature. Everything's not gonna be, perfectly symmetrical. If you come across a pepper that is not symmetrical, just be careful as you're cutting it and just try to cut it into, similar shapes, but it won't hurt if it looks different than everything else. Peppers are one of my favorite things. I can eat them raw, I can eat them sauteed, I can eat them roasted.
Peppers are so delicious. Like if you haven't had a sweet pepper raw, like without cooking it, because I know a lot of us like we'll cook with peppers, onions, saute them, and you may throw them straight into the pan. Taste it before you put it in the pan. They are magnificent.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take our mixture of our seasoning and oil, and we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to drizzle 2 or 3 teaspoons over our onion and pepper mix. I'm going to do 3 because I like flavor. And again, we're going to use our hands to go ahead and mix these up.
I just want you to know that I am putting a slice of jalapeno in my mixture.
Oh, that's going to be good. That's going to be good. I'm here for it. And look how beautiful this looks, y'all. And with keeping those onions quartered like that, they're going to roast up really nicely in the oven. Along with your peppers. And the reason we're kind of spacing out our sweet potatoes and our peppers are because our sweet potatoes and our carrots are going to need just a little bit more time to cook through than our peppers and our onions. So about 10 minutes after you put your sweet potatoes in the oven, go ahead and add your next mixture. So that was one of the reasons why this recipe called for 2 sheet pans. So I'm going to take my second sheet pan and go ahead and put my pepper and onion mixture there. And again, I'll show you guys how beautiful that looks with that seasoning. Dump them right out on there and just spread them out so that nothing's sitting on top. And again, if you want to go ahead and sprinkle a little bit more seasoning on top, feel free. I'm going to add a little bit more garlic powder. And I'm going to do a little bit more salt too, because we only put 1 teaspoon of salt on there. And if you have sea salt, always go with sea salt that has a higher nutritional content in it than your regular table salt. So how beautiful look.
Yes, and I just wanted to show you all mine cut up and seasoned and drizzled. So I'm about to put mine on the baking sheet as well.
Nice. Nice, nice, nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop these in the oven now. So right now, if you guys wanted to go ahead and put your quinoa or your rice on in your Instant Pot, it usually like 20 minutes to cook. This would be the perfect time to do that, but it's not necessary for the recipe. It's just if you. It looked like
So good.
Oh, pop up. Hold on. Let me see if I can go back to it.
You add any kind of oil to keep from sticking. Yes, when we blended all the spices, before we blended the spices, we actually put 3 tablespoons of oil into the bowl first and then mix them with the spices.
Yes, and we made sure that they were coated very evenly. So that's that part, like where you're actually using your hands to really dig in and make sure that they're coated. So if you found that based on the amount you were using, they weren't coated evenly, you can always add another teaspoon of that grapeseed, avocado, or olive oil into your mixture. So next up, we are going to make the crema. And this is a lime crema recipe that I found online. Again, it goes into the spirit of a plant-based recipe. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my yogurt. Like I said, Latiana isn't using yogurt today. She's gonna be using sour cream.
And I'm about to put my rice on as you're starting that, then I'll hop right in.
Okay. And for our lime crema, I'm going to be using 4 ounces of yogurt. And we're just gonna put that into a bowl. My yogurt is a plant-based yogurt. If you want to use regular yogurt, that's fine. This one is actually made from almonds, and it is the Silk. I think, yeah, this is the Silk brand. They make pretty good stuff. I'm never disappointed. And what we're going to add to that is the juice from 1 lime. So what I like to do is take my lime and kind of roll it a little bit, and it's going to make it a lot easier to squeeze the juice out of because it's going to make it a little bit softer. So I'm just rolling my lime because it was a little firm from being in the refrigerator. And I'm going to go ahead and take that lime and just cut it in half. So you usually will have seeds in your lime. It looks like my lime is seedless, but I'm not totally happy about that, but it's okay. And it's going to be better so I don't have to pick the seeds out ahead of time. But Latiana and I always talk about the importance of eating food that has seeds. And the reason behind that is because anything that doesn't have seeds is obviously sterile. That's not a natural thing. We don't really get with that at all, but to each his own. I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze the first half of my lime right into my yogurt mixture. And this is just a good exercise to build some muscle definition. No, I'm kidding. It's not gonna do that. But you guys can go ahead and squeeze that in there. Again, we're using the juice from 1 whole lime. So we're
how much yogurt did you use?
4 ounces.
4 ounces, okay.
That's enough for, at least 4 servings. There. Next up, I'm going to take my second lime and add just a little bit of lime zest. And again, this is why buying organic is important. Eating your vegetables is important too. If you have a recipe where you're ingesting the skin, you want that. So I'm going to take my little tiny grater, and I'm just going to grate about half the lime in. And
so change of plans midway through. I'm going to use yogurt.
And you see how pretty the zest is? It smells great. It looks great. It's going to add some flavor topping. All right, we got that in there. Next up, we're going to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper, just regular black pepper, not the cayenne. So we're gonna do a half a teaspoon of salt. It looks like right, we're gonna do half a teaspoon of our sea salt. And also a half a teaspoon of black pepper. So I'm going back into my mortar and pestle. Fresh as well. So this next part is not a necessity, but it's an addition that I personally like. So I'm gonna take about 1 sprig, or actually 2 sprigs of cilantro, and I'm gonna chop that up and add that to the oil. So this is just an addition. It's gonna create some depth, and it's gonna be very yummy, and you're gonna get that nice Mexican flavor. So usually, if you ask anyone who's like indigenous Mexican or has worked in a Mexican restaurant, they tend to not use the stem of the cilantro, but I do, because I feel like it's wasteful to not. But they'll probably tell you for presentation purposes, just use the leaves because it looks better. But I'm into using the stem too. So we have that chopped up here.
Lime zest. Anytime you zest, oh, there goes. Okay. my camera thing fell, but anyway, anytime you use you zest from a citrus fruit, the smell is.
I know. My whole kitchen right now is like garlic and zesty and cilantro. I'm gonna take that chopped up cilantro. We're gonna sprinkle it right into our bowl. So as you can see, before we mix it up, this is what it looks like. And oh my God, does this smell so good. So you can take a whisk or a and just mix that up really well. This looks so beautiful. I mean, it looks like restaurant quality. It looks really good. And this is just a really fun recipe to make. And especially like even with your kids, you can make this as a family. You can make it as a single person. It's fun, it's festive. And like for me, this class, with everything that's been going on with the pandemic and us having to stay at home and being bored or being depressed or wherever, for me and my household, like we get through our days by cooking and eating fresh. And it's so important, not just for the bottom line for your health, but for your mental health as well. When you're involving yourself and you're involving your children and your family and making healthy food, it makes a difference in your overall, day-to-day life and your happiness. So I will show you guys what this crema looks like.
And honestly, you're creating memories. Like when you cook with your family members or your friends or whomever, you're creating such valuable memories. And you'll hear Premier and I talk a lot about the scent and the smell of things. And smell is such a powerful memory recall.
Yes.
Tool, or I don't know if tool is not the right word, but smell is powerful.
It is. If you guys have ever had, if you recalled a memory just based on smell, that's happened to me so many times. Like if you go through a family member's house, you're cooking something and you remember it from your childhood. It's a very interesting thing that
it is.
So
all right. So I think that I may be done with my crema. Here we go, everybody.
Nice. Doesn't it smell good with that lime?
It smells so amazing. So you did cilantro, lime juice, lime zest, and yogurt. Did you add anything else?
Yes, we did a half a teaspoon of the sea salt and a half a teaspoon of the black pepper.
Gotcha. Okay.
So while Latiana is finishing hers, I'm gonna go ahead and put mine in the refrigerator just to let it set and let those flavors develop a little bit. If you guys ever are making this recipe in the future, you can always make this crema up to 2 days in advance, and it holds really well, and the flavors set in the longer you let it sit. When I made or rice, this would be the time if it's on the stove to check on it. If you made it in an Instant Pot like mine, It looks great. It is all done. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and check on our sweet potatoes and check on everything that's in the oven. We're going to go ahead and open our ovens up and just turn our sweet potatoes and turn our peppers as well. Oh my goodness. So these are, oh, this looks great. So this is beautiful. And this is like the perfect time that you want to turn them. So I'll show you what mine look like. And as you can see, some of them have this beautiful, beautiful, nice char on it. And I like that. I like that a lot. And as you can see, they're easily coming up off of the aluminum foil. So what that means is we really season them with that oil mixture well, because they're not sticking to the aluminum foil. And if you've noticed that yours are like starting to burn a little bit or they're finished, you can go ahead and just take them right out of the oven. So mine, and the way you can test them is to kind of put a fork through, and you want them to be like nice and soft, not too soft, but this is like perfect to where they'll still stand on the fork, but not like fall off.
Yeah, like you want your roasted vegetables to be like al dente.
Yes, that's the perfect explanation. So
mine aren't charred yet, but I put mine in a few minutes after yours. So I definitely have some time for my sweet potatoes and carrot. But I'm going to check the softness. They're soft though. Remember, my sweet potatoes weren't cured, so I guess they don't need much more time.
Right.
But I love the char, so I need mine to at least have some char.
So pretty. I'm going to check on the peppers now and the onions. So the peppers, they went in. So for me, these look great. The onions have like this nice brown coating on them, starting to fall apart from them being wedged. It smells amazing. It looks amazing. And I don't like my peppers overdone, so I'm going to take these out as well. And now you guys are going to have the opportunity to take your tortillas, put them in a little aluminum foil, and pop them in the oven so that they're nice and warm for our fajitas. So I'm going to about 4. So
I'll show my peppers and onions. See, these have a nice char. So I'm going to stick them in for a little bit while longer, but they're beautiful. Like the process and the experience of eating, basically, eating your colors is so fulfilling.
Yeah. And it was such like a kitschy thing, when we were kids. It was like, eat the rainbow. Very healthy. I'm wrap my tortillas in some foil. Make sure they're completely covered because you don't want to dry them out. You want them to still be soft, but you want them to be warm. So I'm going to take another piece of foil so that minute or two, so that they get nice and warm. Does anybody have any questions so far, or any comments, any additions, or something that you think might work? So Latiana, you're going to be putting your vegetables back in with your tortillas, correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So I just stuck my tortillas in the oven. Do you have more of the oil and spice mix left?
I do. And what you're actually going to want to do with that is you can add that to, actually, you know what? Let me show you. I'll show you exactly what to do.
Okay.
So you're going to take your bowl that you mixed your vegetables in from the beginning. It's still going to have a little bit of that oil and granulated mixture left in it. You can take everything that's been roasted and finished and put it right back in that bowl. I'm going to do that now. It's easy to do with the aluminum foil because you can just lift it up and drop your vegetables right into that bowl. I'm going to do the same thing with my peppers and onions. If yours is heavy, you might not want to do this because you don't want the foil to break.
Tamia, we just going on. It is a time check. We are over our time.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, we're so sorry for holding y'all up. We knew that this was going to be a really time intensive recipe, and we're usually really good about keeping our time. So we did want to talk to you all about the difference between a sweet potato and a yam. So as Tamia I'm going to keep her video spotlighted so she can just show you the final preparation stages of the fajita. But oftentimes you'll hear people use sweet potato and yam interchangeably, and they are not the same. They are two separate vegetables. So I'll talk you through this, and then I'm actually going to show you the difference between both the sweet potato and the yam. So what's in a name? When it comes to a yam, there is a bit of confusion. The truth is that what you've been calling, or what most of us have been calling a yam, is actually a sweet potato. In fact, we probably have never, in the United States, we probably have never eaten a yam before. All of those sweet potatoes / yams that we see in both the conventional markets and even like the farmers markets, the farmers that grow in our area locally, they are sweet potatoes. So a true yam it is a root vegetable. So we're not too far off with that. But a true yam is a starchy edible root of the Dioscorea genus, and it's generally imported to America from the Caribbean. So it's rough, it's scaly, and it's very, very low in beta carotene. So that means that it's actually not as orange as a sweet potato. So when you think of beta carotene, most of the time you might think about carrots or other orange vegetables. So yams are actually very low in that. Depending on the variety, and I'm going to go into sweet potatoes now. Depending on the variety of a sweet potato, the flesh of a sweet potato can actually vary from white to orange and even purple, just like how carrots are. So for me, I had a yellow carrot, a purple carrot, and an orange carrot today. The orange flesh variety, those are the ones that we're most familiar with. They were introduced to the United States like decades and decades ago. So they've been around for a while, and that's why we're so familiar with them. In order to distinguish it from the white variety that we're accustomed to, producers and shippers chose the English form of the African word nyami, which labels them like yams. So you see, I'm kind of like going back and forth between like the sweet potato definition and the yam definition, because again, we do often use them interchangeably, but they are two distinct vegetables. So today, the USDA actually requires labels with the term yam to also be accompanied by the term sweet potato. So that helps. I don't know if that actually helps with confusion or creates more confusion.
I can create more.
Right. So despite these label regulations, most people still think of sweet potatoes as yams, regardless of their true identity. So again, when we're saying candy yams or anything like that, like especially around the holidays, you're eating sweet potatoes. And actually, I've even heard some people distinguish sweet potatoes and yams like based on the size. So like what do they usually call like the yams, the larger ones?
Yes. So if you guys have ever seen like yuca or something, or cassava, these are things that look much more similar to a real like Caribbean yam than a sweet potato does. So if you guys have ever seen those, like they have them in Produce Junction all the time. They're humongous most of the time. I've never really seen them be as small as a sweet potato. They're usually like pretty large, and they're very dark and brown and like kind of hairy. So this
yuca roots are huge.
Yes, this goes back to Americans and us being just so coddled and thinking we're always right about something when in fact we be dead wrong. So try to argue now about sweet potatoes versus yams. You can, hit them with this knowledge because they probably never had a yam or seen a yam in their life.
I'm taking out my onions and peppers because they are cooking. I heard them sizzling, so I already knew what that was. I'm gonna leave the sweet potatoes in for a little while longer, but I'm gonna show you all the picture of the difference between the sweet potato and the yam. And as you see, Pamia is dressing her tortilla.
Yes. And oh my God, I cannot wait to dig into this. So I'm plating right now. I'll let Latiana show you guys this picture, and then I'll show you what my...
Okay, so here is the yam and sweet potato. So as you see, they look very different. So the sweet potato is, well, I like how the yam is described. It's like dry, starchy, fresh, bark-like skin. And as we know, like our sweet potatoes are smooth. So if maybe for no other distinguishing characteristic, you'll know the difference between a sweet potato and a yam based on the flesh. But you might not even need to know it because it's going to be very hard for you to find them in the store.
Very hard, especially in the wintertime in the Northeast.
Right. Okay, I'm going to spotlight your video so everybody can see you.
So this is my final plate. I hope you guys can see a good picture of it. So I have a good mix of my sweet potatoes, my carrots, my sweet peppers, and that onion mixture. I have drizzled that plant-based crema that we made on top. And I've also added, remember we had that extra lime that we only used that skin from. I've cut that up because just for an additional, like flavor, you can go ahead and sprinkle some of that lime juice on top. It really gives it a kick and brings out all of those natural flavors. And the vegetables, like I said, I love Mexican food. So a lot of times when I make dishes, I also have some guacamole or some avocado slices, or even like some pico de gallo, some tomatoes, some fresh cilantro and oil. Whatever you personally like, feel free to add that on top. But tell me this doesn't look absolutely delicious and beautiful.
It looks so good. I'm telling you, I can't wait to eat this lunch. We have a question from Michelle. She was asking which is healthier. Are you asking about the sweet potatoes and the yams?
So as far as I know, like Latiana said, the actual yams don't really have like beta carotene or like a couple other things in them. So I think if you go like pound per pound, if I'm not mistaken, actual sweet potatoes are going to be a little bit higher in most nutrition when it comes to like vitamin A and like the beta carotene and things like that. But don't hold me to it because I actually have, it looks like, do I have a breakdown here of the actual percentages? Yes, so it looks like sweet potatoes are technically a little healthier. But keep in mind that when you make a recipe, it's not always about how you utilize it. If you're baking versus frying or something like that, because you're going to lose a lot of nutrients the more you overcook your food. So that's something to consider as well. It's not always like, one vegetable versus the other. A lot of times it's in preparation and keeping things as fresh as possible.
Absolutely. So we're gonna wrap up, and again, we're sorry for holding you all a little longer on your Saturday morning and as you enter your Saturday afternoon. Thank you again for joining us and for tuning in as we prepared this recipe. We are going to send out an email with a copy of the recipe, and also the email is going to have a link to it to a survey, an evaluation survey for us, and that is how we are. That survey goes to our funders. So we are supported by the National Network of Library of Medicine, like this program in particular, the Mid-Atlantic region. And since June, we have been hosting monthly Green Thumbs at Home, both gardening and plant-based cooking classes. So we'll send you a link in that email. So if you all could take the time, it probably takes a minute or two to complete the survey. That will be really helpful, because we would like to continue to be able to share these. Pamia, you are tearing it up.
It's so good.
We would like to be able to continue to share these classes with you. That might be all, but follow us on Instagram and Facebook, Black Girls with Green Thumbs. We have this beautiful apron that Pamia has on today. We actually have that for sale, as well as the tank top that I'm wearing and the black t-shirt that she has. So we have a whole store on our website, blackgirlswithgreenthumbs.org. They're great gifts. We even have oven mitts. So please, so continue to support us and share these little gifts with your family and friends, especially those who including yourself, that have an inkling for gardening or nutrition. It'll be really on brand for them.
And again, thank you guys so much for joining us. I really, really hope you guys enjoy this recipe as much as I have. Happy holidays, and stay safe. I hope that you guys will make this throughout the rest of quarantine, because it's so delicious. Even down from it. Wait till you taste it, Latiana.
Thank you, ladies.
Yes, thank you. anybody actually follow along and make, if you want to share like pictures, feel free to, like post them and tag us in it so we can check them out on our Instagram or on our Facebook page.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. So enjoy your weekend, everybody. Happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year.
Right. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.